But what's really happening in our brain is our amygdala fully engages and our prefrontal cortex shuts down, and then our nervous system kicks in. And the biggest thing to practice taking yourself out of survival mode is to get back in touch with your nervous system and be gentle with yourself in doing it. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm being so dumb right now. Why am I so triggered? It's like my body and my brain thinks I'm in trouble and I need to reassure it. It's really like retraining a part of yourself. And so there's one of my favorite tools, ironically, this might sound silly, but holding an ice cube gives a physical sensation that will send a nervous shock. With your experience, probably know this, but to maybe some of your viewers who don't know this, if you're having that moment where you feel your nervous system kick in and your adrenaline start rushing, if you can hold an ice cube and give yourself affirmations, I'm safe, I'm okay, I don't need to protect myself right now. And then don't try to revisit it right away. Like, give yourself space to come down from whatever it was that put you in that survival mode in that moment, in that triggering event, and then try to journal about it later. And it doesn't have to be in detail, but write down, what was it that engaged my survival instincts? What did I do that helped me come away from that? What can I do differently next time? So that you can track and log what's working for your body and for your mind and what's not, because all of us are going to be a little bit different.
Welcome back to the Awakened Mumma. I'm so excited to share today's episode with you because it's a powerful one. I'm joined by the incredible Sydney Curtin, a dynamic speaker, author, multi-business owner, life coach, consultant, and serial entrepreneur. With over a decade of experience and one hell of a resume, Coach Curtin brings raw truth, heart-led wisdom, and fierce resilience to everything she does. After overcoming a dark and haunting past, she found herself at a life-altering crossroads, one that could have broken her. But instead of being defined by her trauma, she chose to rise, rewrite her story, and now empowers others to do the same. This conversation is a deep dive into transformation, leadership, and turning pain into purpose. But before we dive in, I'd love to ask, if you've been following along and loving this content, please hit that subscribe button and like this episode. I've noticed so many of you are returning. Thank you so much, but haven't subscribed yet, and it makes a huge difference in helping this podcast grow and reach more women like you. All right, let's dive into this powerful episode with Sydney Curtin. Welcome, Sydney. Can you give our viewers a little bit of your background, your story, so that we can get to know you a little better and share your expertise?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. Super excited to be here. Really glad we met. I am kind of have a lot of irons in the fire right now, but it took a long time to get to a place where I could juggle all of those things. First and foremost, I'm a mom of 3. I'm also a birth mom. And for your viewers that don't know or maybe are unfamiliar with what some of that terminology might entail, in 2019, my oldest daughter, I placed for adoptions for reasons to protect her beyond my control. I didn't have the ability to obtain full custody of her prior to her being born. And so I wanted to make sure that she was first and foremost safe from the things that I could not protect her from. When I entered into that world of adoption, I didn't know much about it. Ironically, I was adopted by my stepmom when I was about 13. I lost my mom when I was a young child, or I guess in my early teens, not young child. But even then, it wasn't like a at birth placement the way that we traditionally think of adoption, right? And so when I was thrown into that world, I learned that it was not what I thought it was and severely needed extensive reformation. And that set me on one of my journeys to write a book.
Gives me chills when I hear your story. Yeah, it's powerful. And so how did trauma shape your identity, and who did you become on the other side of it?
Yeah, so like that whole story, that idea of reformation, I dealt with a lot of early childhood trauma pertaining to my mom. And my natural mother, really struggled with a drug addiction. And it's interesting because the circle of life kind of dictates that as children, we expect at some point in our life to lose our parents to, death. And hopefully that's in a peaceful way. It's of course not always, but we as adults don't anticipate living through losing our child. And then that mourning looks even different when you're mourning someone who's still alive. And even people who haven't been through an adoption can maybe relate to that in other ways, losing somebody that's still alive. And, not all of those types of losses are a real loss. I tell people I've lost people that are still here, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it may have hurt in the moment, but it was beneficial for me long term. However, pertaining to this adoption, I was promised an open adoption with my oldest daughter. And that was supposed to look like on paper that we were going to have 6 in-person visits a year and have an open relationship, sort of like the marriage of two families, if you will. And I understood that they were going to be her primary caretakers and parental figures, but they articulated that they wanted her to know me, that they appreciated everything I was doing in consideration of her. And less than 3 years later, they broke all of those promises to me, moved my daughter out of the country, and in essence, cut out all communication. So for that reason, that it became like a death in some ways. It imitated a death in the sense that I had no control over the loss of this relationship, and it wasn't what I agreed to. It wasn't what I wanted, and it was for circumstances outside of my control. And I had no legal authority at this point. That's the nature of what adoption looks like in the United States right now, and in a lot of places right now. So that trauma spiraled me at first. Like, I don't think that everybody in the moment, right, deals with it maybe the way that they wish they would have. A lot of the times it takes us as individuals going to those dark places to learn how to crawl out of that space. But we all have a choice as individuals about if we're going to let the things that we have to go through to become who we are, if that is going to turn us into a victim or a victor. And I say that in my coaching a lot. I want people to use that and go through it, because if you just sit in the hell that you're going through, you stay there. So to get out, you got to keep going. And that's what I did. I got involved in a nonprofit organization that's working on legal reformation in the adoption industry in the United States today. And I wrote a book that is meant to be used as a pre-placement tool for birth parents, natural parents, and adoptive parents, and even adoptees. And even though I say pre-placement as in entering into your adoption, it really can be used for any stage of your adoption, because it's never too late to reevaluate the foundation of any relationship if you want to improve it. What I've done is, if you think about premarital counseling workbooks, are you familiar with? Yes. So lots of people will go through these premarital things before they get married, right? And that's what I want people doing in adoption. I want you to sit down and have these hard conversations now so that you can evaluate as a couple, if you will, are we truly compatible to raise a child together literally for the rest of our lives, right? So that's what this is. And my hope is that it gives people a more clear view about, do our definitions of adoption align? Are the key things that I'm looking for as an adoptive couple or a natural family or mother, do those things align? Conflict resolution styles, love languages, how we're going to honor the uniqueness of our child's start to life, all of those things. So it took me 3 years, but when I lost my daughter to a decision that her adoptive parents made, I had to decide if I was going to continue to wallow in that or if I was going to make change from it.
That's such a shame. I can relate to when you're going through trauma, you really do have to go through the depths of it to come out the other side. And hindsight is that reflection of, I wish I had have known better, but you don't know better. You've got to go through it to be able to make those empowering decisions to move forward. So in the depths of your healing, were there other tools or practices that supported you?
Yeah, so my educational background is in psychology. And so I stopped pursuing my doctorate. Originally, I wanted to go to be a psychiatrist, and I left the field of psychology because I found that in a lot of ways it didn't align with how powerful I believed individuals to be. And it took away some of that with the field of medicine. And while medicine can be a great tool to help people get to a place of stability, I don't ever want people believing that it has to be, without medical necessity, a lifelong crutch that you have to lean on. And so I took more of a coaching route, and that's what led me to my coaching business, was implementing concepts from psychology in order to better ourselves as individuals, in order to strengthen things in us, about us, regardless of if we can change the circumstances themselves. A lot of these tools I drew on from cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectual behavioral therapy. And it's a very similar concept. Some of the tools even very closely coincide or cross over. One of the biggest ones for me was, and this one's tough, but it's just very literal, radical acceptance. And I had to sit in the fact that there was nothing that I could do to change the mind of my adoptive parents. There was nothing that I could do to bring my mom back. There was nothing that I could do to undo the adoption. Just like all of the things that I had been through in life, I had to sit through them one at a time. And then coupled with that radical acceptance, which is brutal, I might add, like that just, okay, this is what it is kind of thing, was the concept of urge surfing. We actually use this with midwives too. And in a sense, they give you this analogy if you've ever had a midwife, or for those of us who have babies, even some doctors will tell you, like, ride the wave of this contraction, right? So while you're sitting in that radical acceptance, a lot of us have impulses to take away from the pain. Yeah, human nature dictates that we run from things that are uncomfortable. And it's why that radical acceptance piece is so hard. When you couple radical acceptance with this concept of urge surfing, which is not only sitting in the emotion, but allowing yourself to ride through the wave of that emotion without allowing yourself to fall back on things that might cushion you from the pain of that. It would be the equivalent of an epidural, but people use unhealthy tools when we're talking about these psychological pains that people deal with, whether it's, drinking or smoking. And I'm not saying it's always that extreme. But for me, it was. I struggled with drinking for a long time to try to drown the pain of losing my child. And I never had a drinking problem per se, but it was a problem for me because I knew that I was running from the emotional turmoil that my heart was in over losing my daughter. So I learned to urge surf and radically accept. And that's what I did. And it was every day, every hour, sometimes multiple times an hour for a really long time, where it was just the forefront, like the first thought on my mind, right? The very first thing that I thought of every day for a long, long time was, she's not here and I can't change it. And I would just have to go through those steps of, okay, this is what it is. What can I control? How can I make a difference? And I would journal during that time, and I would let myself cry, and I would let myself feel everything that came to mind. And then I had to learn to forgive myself. And while that sounds really basic, like, what did you do to get through the trauma? Forgiving myself for the things that I didn't know, like you said, hindsight's 2020, right? We don't know what we don't know. And I had to learn to forgive myself for the things that I didn't know and the things that I couldn't control.
Forgiveness was one of the tools that I used in my healing too. And I can resonate with the tears and just letting them be and sitting in that. I did that in the Ho'oponopono practice. I did a shower, and I just let the tears and the water rush over me while I did my forgiveness prayer. And that really, really helped me just move past forgiving myself when I didn't know better. So yeah, I can relate. And if someone else is stuck in survival mode, for those listening, where would you tell them to start?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think it probably varies based on why you're in survival mode. Is a big one, but just in a general scenario, what that survival mode is, if you can recognize it, because a lot of people will pass these things off as panic attacks. But what's really happening in our brain is our amygdala fully engages and our prefrontal cortex shuts down, and then our nervous system kicks in. And the biggest thing to practice taking yourself out of survival mode is to get back in touch with your nervous system and be gentle with yourself in doing it. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm being so dumb right now. Why am I so triggered? It's like, oh, my body and my brain thinks I'm in trouble and I need to reassure it. It's really like retraining a part of yourself. And so there's one of my favorite tools, ironically, this might sound silly, but holding an ice cube gives a physical sensation that will send a nervous shock. With your experience, probably know this, but to maybe some of your viewers who don't know this, if you're having that moment where you feel your nervous system kick in and your adrenaline start rushing, if you can hold an ice cube and give yourself affirmations, I'm safe, I'm okay, I don't need to protect myself right now. And then don't try to revisit it right away. Like, give yourself space to come down from whatever it was that put you in that survival mode in that moment, in that triggering event, and then try to journal about it later. And it doesn't have to be in detail, but write down, what was it that engaged my survival instincts? What did I do that helped me come away from that? What can I do differently next time? So that you can track and log what's working for your body and for your mind and what's not, because all of us are going to be a little bit different.
Such a good tip. I do a lot of shifting in my environment when I'm feeling a certain way, and nature always brings me back. So I do a lot of grounding and just getting out and being in nature. I think that has a lot to do with my human design and just who I am as a person, that nature just feels at home to me. So
I love
it's a
that
powerful
too,
tool.
because it goes back to how we're all a little bit different in what's going to work and what doesn't work. For me, work, like actually working my job at the time before I owned my own businesses, that kind of was my coping mechanism. But I overcompensated, where I just was busy all the time. And anything that my boss wanted to pass on to me, or that I could do for the team or the company that I was employed for at that period in my life, I was going to take it, regardless of if I had the emotional or mental bandwidth for it or not, because it was a task to do. So therefore, there was no downtime to acknowledge the things that I was really wrestling with internally. And now that I recognize that about myself, with those moments where people need a quick fix, that ice cube thing works really well. And then going back to what you said, people have that mechanical or physical or tactical side to them. I'm more like that. And so the gym became my new outlet, where I didn't feel the need to be the yes man in order to keep myself so busy that I didn't have to deal with these things. I found outlets in rock climbing and my cardio workouts and training my body to be physically stronger the way that I wanted to be mentally and emotionally more resilient as well. And then I know several of my clients are more like you in that creative and grounding area, where one of my clients, I love this about her. Some people think that it's silly, but she'll rearrange her bedroom whenever she's having one of those moments, but she actually really enjoys it. It's not like a running away thing. It's like she loves interior design, and so she will just find a way to reorient things in her physical space that give her that sense of grounding and control and visualization and creativity that totally bring her back to where she needs to be. And I love that for her. And her room always looks so cool, might I add.
I can relate to that. Because as women, we have so many tabs open in our brain like a computer. And if I am in a state of, I've got so much to do, and if I want to come into the office, I'm not coming in here if I can see the house is a mess. I've got to clean it up first so that it's aesthetic before I can, I clean my brain out, close the tabs of some of the things that need to be done. So then I can come and just, okay, I feel good. Now I can focus on what I need to do. I've closed those tabs, and yeah, I can relate to things feeling nice and looking nice.
The closed tabs in your brain thing, I absolutely relate to. My dad gave me a strategy that he used in his business that's also another really cool tool that people can use. And it probably doesn't work for everybody, but my brain works this way. He was like, whenever you've got a million tabs open in your brain, just write them all down on a piece of paper. No order, but lines, and go down the list. Just dot, 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 in whatever order they come out to you in that moment. And then what he does is he goes, depending on how long the list is, he has A, B, and C. And he says, okay, now prioritize the things that are of the utmost priority by A, but limit yourself to 3 things or 5 things, again, depending on how many are on the list. And then you do the same thing with B and C. Then from there, you go to A and you number A 1 through 3, for example. So what is A1? What's A2? What's A3? Et cetera, et cetera. Same thing for B, same thing for C. Now you just accomplish little things at a time. So if A1 is really, really big and feels really scary, you choose what's the easiest thing on my list that I can tackle so that I can physically scratch one off. And then you go back and you prioritize it based on how you have done it. Okay, this is the most important, but give yourself those little wins too.
I love it. Brain dumping is something that I did for a period of time to help me close the tabs before bed. So of a nighttime, if there's something that's come up that, oh, I needed to do that today, or I've got to do that tomorrow, or whatever it is that's occupying those tabs, sit down and write it all down. And then they're not in my brain anymore. They're on paper. So if I'm worried about forgetting it tomorrow or whatever reason, it's still in my head. Then I can just go to sleep and it's not there anymore. Yeah. So I love that. It's so powerful. Brain dumping. Cool. Yeah. Love that. Have you got any other tips, any other tools that for maybe people who have sort of started their journey and they are kind of feeling like they're just not sure what the next step would be to go to, like for people who have started but are stuck?
It's so situational. I cover that one-on-one with each of my clients in my coaching. Like we go through a real roadmap plan and like, let's evaluate what's going on so that we can decide what this roadmap looks like together and come up with the next action steps. But as a generalization, it would be get advice from other people that you trust, but diversify who those people are. Because if you, for example, are a member of a church or at a gym, a lot of the people that you interact with in your general day-to-day are going to have similar opinions, perhaps, about a topic if they're all part of the same organization. So I always tell people, I don't want to coach. I don't want to invest in XYZ right now. I just want to figure out what's next. Okay, well, if that's the case, pick the 3 people that you trust the most in your life, but make sure that all 3 of those are from somewhere different. Ideally, they don't even know each other, and have a conversation with them about where you're at and ask them what they think next steps are based on their relationship with you and how they know you. And write down the pros and cons of that later. Friend A said this, I really liked it, said this, I don't think that fits my needs right now. Do the same thing for your other friends that you spoke with. And then just recognize how your gut feels about it, because your body will tell you what's right for you. And sometimes we just really seek that affirmation based on trauma wounds that we have. We need somebody to validate that gut feeling is right. And I had to learn to completely steer away from that because I stopped getting that validation from the top 3 people in my life. So now I don't need that resource. But for people that are early on in their journey and are coming out of that, I think that it's still incredibly valuable. It doesn't mean that I don't value the opinion of others. It just means that I don't depend on it to take action steps in my life now. You can train yourself to do that by utilizing this tactic or similar tactics to it, of these interview style questions with trusted figures and valuable advice, and then sitting with that advice and allowing yourself to be cognizant and aware and self-reflective about how you're feeling regarding the advice you were given.
I did a lot of coaching calls that were a mentor of mine had done with other health professionals, and I can really relate to a lot of what she shares and a lot of what she's gone through. So for me, it was a no-brainer that I would lean into that, because she was, there was something that come up for me, I'm like, she's just been there. She's already done that. So yeah, finding someone that you can resonate with that has those tools, and then just reflecting, does this work for me? How does it sit with me? Yeah.
One of the things that's important to realize too with this, and maybe you can relate, I had to learn when I was disconnecting from the need for other people's approval, especially when their advice went against what my gut reaction was or my intuitive instincts to any given situation. I had to learn that other people give advice based on their preconceived life experiences too. And so everybody has trauma, and everybody has experiences in their life that lead them to suggest or make recommendations regarding what it is that we're going through when we come to them and ask for advice. So one of the things that I always encourage people to do as a result of that, when going into this more interview style approach and reflective, I'm going to just talk to people in my life approach, if you will, is recognize always that regardless of if their advice feels like what you wanted it to be or not, this was somebody that you trusted enough to ask in the first place, it still comes from a good place. That if these are people that you really trust and know really care for you, that you had enough faith would be honest with you to approach with these circumstances. We can't control other people's life experiences and therefore how they'll respond to any given situation. So recognizing intention above the words that may be construed in any given conversation was really crucial to me and allowed me to have a lot more grace for certain people in my life regarding really sensitive topics like adoption, for example. Not a lot of people have personal testimony with adoption. So I would talk to people in my life about this, and the conversation would be all over the map with these people. For some, it was, I support you in whatever you do. For some, it was, why would you ever give up a baby? That verbiage alone to this day makes me sick. I did anything except give up. I fought until the end of the road for my child, and I still do to this day. And then my dad's influence of who I was and what I was capable of. But I'm not angry about it anymore because that's all based on where they're at in their life and their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Because with anything in life, people can be close-minded. People can have totally different opinions, but that's the thing. It is just their opinion, and we all have different points of view. So you're just not letting other people's opinions and whatever they've got to say really affect how we feel about ourselves or what decisions that we make, because
right,
we're all different. We all have different pasts, traumas, all of that. So yeah, absolutely. It's something that, I mean, social media has a big influence on how people show up in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, you're telling me.
So if we were to let that affect us, God, can you imagine just how controlled people would be in how they showed up in their everyday life?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, and to a degree it does in some ways, but it's you saying that I just got back from New York doing a podcast with a couple from a Teen Mom Show, which is a series out here in the States with MTV. And this was a while ago now. Their daughter is in her teens, but they also placed their child for adoption, and the controversy that they've faced, not only because of the adoption and already how controversial that is in and of itself, but then the fact that it was monetized by a television station and put all over the nation. It's just the way that it shows up is so relevant. And when our episode dropped, people were I'm either now Satan in the flesh or I'm an angel that made all of these sacrifices, and there's just no in between. It's like, why can we not establish common ground about who we are as individuals and appreciate it is for what it is? Just take it that way.
Yeah.
But you're right.
It's incredible how the same story gets shared and people have absolutely conflicting views about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Being able to distance from that, though, it goes back to what we were talking about, right? Like, you can thank you for your opinion and next. And it's that urge surfing, like take in and release and move on.
Yep. These forgiveness practices can be so powerful.
Yes,
so what message would you share with the women listening who feel like they've lost their voice or their purpose?
Your story is always impactful to someone. And if you feel that your voice isn't being heard, then you're telling it to the wrong people. And it's a big ocean out there. And you don't have to limit yourself, therefore, to the circle of influence that you currently have. Your target audience is not your hometown. And I had to learn that very early on in my journey, that the people that value my opinion the most, that want to hear my opinions on things, none of them are from where I grew up. It's all people that heard me on a podcast or that I met through a business partner or other network connections that I have. And that's powerful. So free yourself from that idea that you first have to have the buy-in of the people that know you or the people in your immediate surrounding circles of influence before you make a difference, say it anyways.
Yeah. And without the fear that they're going to judge you, because those people are probably not the ones that are watching.
So true. And I mean, that's that going back to the social media thing, they're going to judge anyways. So if you've forgiven yourself for the components that you still hold on to, then regardless of their opinion, do it scared. Do it when you're upset. Do it when you're unmotivated. Just do it, because you are impacting somebody. I remember so vividly, there was a show that I went on. It was adoption, and I had just not a day before got a text from my daughter's adoptive parents, and they had just sent me a picture. And I've been given specific instruction to not reply to their communications, but there's a shared photo app, and it had been months since I had received a picture. So it really reopened that wound in some ways. And because I've now been through these things, I have the tools in my toolbox that I need to lean on and to utilize in order to come back to a place of grounding. But that doesn't mean that it's linear, and it doesn't mean that it's easy. So I was drained. And then I got on this show to talk about these things that I bring 100% energy to, and the conviction and the experience that I've had. And it was a great episode, but I had that lingering, just that hurt in the back of my heart from what I had just, the picture that I had just received, and like, where is she and what is she doing and how is she doing and what's her favorite color and what are her interests? And it just all comes flooding back in. But I did the show, and I got on a plane, and I came back home. And when I landed, I had like 15 messages from people all over the United States that had watched the live stream and were moved by the story of my adoption testimony, and were either going through a similar experience, or they were considering adoption, or they had questions about whatever it was. And it just was a really healthy reminder that regardless of what you're going through, and regardless of people's opinions of what it is that you're dealing with, you are impacting somebody if you share it with enough people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you can let their opinions be their opinions, because that's the theory, right? The let them theory. Everyone has an opinion. You don't have to sit there and let it affect you, because you don't know what other people are thinking. Why try to get in their head? Just do you, show up authentically and share your story, and those who it needs to reach and affect and touch, it will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've stepped outside of the 9-to-5 matrix and embraced both motherhood and business. What's one practical change that mums can make to feel more aligned and empowered?
Okay, so there is a TED Talk, and I'm going to butcher the name of the pronunciation, so I'm not going to try. I'm just going to explain the concept. But I actually had a coach of mine share it with me a long time ago. And the concept, in a nutshell, is that we all divide our lives into thirds, if you will. One fraction of it is necessity. We have to work to pay the bills. We have to sleep in order to be able to function, that general concept. One of it is continued development, and the other is in enjoyment and things that are actually fulfilling to us. And so I had to decide what the three most important things in my life were for continued development and, of course, necessity, so that I could better balance what I was doing. So I guess what it really was for me was that I was in sales, and I knew that sales could take me anywhere, but I didn't understand business or accounting or finances or all of the boring stuff that nobody wanted to understand. But I knew that I didn't want to work for somebody, because I wanted to be present in my children's lives. With that being said, I committed to working for almost 5 years for a company that I really dreaded, but I was very diligent about my time management. And I think that was really a big number one piece. The second thing that I did with that time management was I spent that other fraction of the time that we had spoke about getting coffee with mentors that had built businesses before, reading on things that I needed to understand, exploring business models, and just having the boring, I mean, they were fun to me, but some of them were very boring. I don't really care about accounting or bookkeeping, but I needed to understand it. So I was having those conversations. And then the third piece that I did was I was so obnoxiously diligent about my financial management, where I knew that if I was going to take this risk, that I needed to temporarily cut back on luxuries that I had afforded to myself in order to have the ability to make it make financial sense for me to take this risk. And then COVID happened. And so, against my will, I was actually cut short of my ability to do that full 5 years. It was just shy of that. And so it still worked out pretty close timing wise. But I worked a job that remained open where I stayed for a little while. It was deemed a necessity store. And I just thought about it and I prayed about it. Like, is it the right time? Am I being ridiculous? Have I been doing this all wrong? It's been 4 years. I've saved up, XYZ. But I just decided to take the leap. And I think that that was kind of, it's the let them concept too, right? Like, we can either choose to live in faith or we can choose to live in fear. And we can choose to care about their opinion or we can choose to let them have their opinion and let it not affect us. So I just made a conscious decision to implement that rule that I had held others to. And I opened my first business and it started so slow that it was painful. And I seriously thought about closing it down 18 months later. I was like, this is not where I want it to go. I sat down with someone again, and I think that was the mistake that I made. I thought I had gotten all of the information that I needed in order to run a successful business. Therefore, I didn't continue to seek advice. And what I needed to be doing was continue all of the things that I had been doing for the last 4 to 4.5 years. I needed to continue to do that. Okay, now I've done this milestone. What's next? What's next? What's next? But I saved it, and my income, praise God, 4x'd almost overnight. It felt immediate. And it really took off the ground. And that business ended up giving me the financial freedom to lead to the next one. And then that one got to a place where it was self-sustainable and led me to the next one, and so on and so forth.
I'd love to circle back to something you said about time. I feel like in this day and age, I'm so busy is like the most used excuse.
Absolutely.
For women not to start something. I can't, I don't have time. Even stay-at-home mums, because they're busy with the kids.
Absolutely.
And I want to speak into that. We all have the same amount of time in the day, so it just can no longer be an excuse that you don't make time for yourself.
Amen.
Because if it's something that feels aligned with you, then you just need to work out pockets of the day that you can, like, it doesn't have to be sitting in front of a computer all day. Like, no, what feels good to you? And right. What, for me, in my human design, it is all about alignment. If I am not aligned with what I'm doing as a generator, I am not doing it. It's going to feel ick. Like I can't force it. And so I look at what my highest values are, what I love to do as a kid, like all of those things, what I've always been good at in any of my roles, whether I did over a decade in childcare and I ran childcare centers. But the biggest thing there is that I cared for people. I moved on to youth work and I was a youth development coach. Once again, I am helping troubled youth do things because they didn't have mentors or parents that were able to help them. I was helping people achieve goals, and that's kind of where I've always worked. And so whatever I chose to do, it's always aligned in helping people achieve goals, helping people, mentoring people. So I think it's really important that people look at their values and their passions before making a decision on what it is that they want to do, because there's always something that's possible for them. And if they don't like showing up in customer service and it doesn't align with them because they're actually not a people person, then go find something to do that there is in alignment with them and that they can do, even if it's starting in small pockets of time.
It's true. And not everybody's ambitions have to be that big. I want to own a business, or I want to start, write a book. It can just be, I want to have more control over my time and what I value. And that really does come down to boiling down what's important to you what do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? How do I set those boundaries? And how do I manage my time so that I can have a more effective version of the life that I want?
Yeah, absolutely. And that can show up in so many different ways, and aligning with whether it's, if you're a visual person and you like looking at the screen, then put the phone down and put the TV on YouTube and find a podcast that you can listen to while you're doing the housework or doing the dishes. That's right there, and you can listen to it. And having that sort of stuff on is powerful for the kids to hear too, because they're seeing you showing up as a mum who is taking care of her own growth and stepping outside of the mum role and showing what's possible for them.
It's true. It's that quality time versus quantity time concept, right? Like, we have all of this time that we spend around people that we care about, but where are we investing our energy during that time that we have with them? And is it really quality, or is it just that we're physically together? And that's a really good point, because I remember my mom being around a lot, but I got none of her time that was valuable to me. And granted, she struggled with an addiction, so there was a lot more that went into all of that. But still, even when I was with my dad, I didn't see my dad very often. And he was a single dad after my mom passed away. But all of the time that I got with him, I feel was predominantly quality time because of the way that he dedicated time. So even though I remember him being very invested in work while he was at work during those hours, obviously he had to keep his business running and raise 3 kids by himself. So time was limited. But the time that we got with him, he was so present. And I think that kids really value that emotional and mental and spiritual presence that we can offer them. And that's going to shape them more than us just physically being a body in the house that they grow up in.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to do is I will reset the house so that the kids, the toys that they were playing with, put away, and I'll get new things out. And at the beginning, just involve myself in their play a little bit so that they have that bit of time with me and I'm engaged with them. And then I'll step away, so that it's important for them to play solo as well. Well, they're twins, they're not really playing solo, they're together, but without me. And then for me, I can step away and do something for me, because they're involved in their play. The house is aesthetic, it's reset with their toys. And then I can have some time that I can focus on myself. And then later I'll bring it back to, we always spend time in nature in the afternoons and stuff as well. So we'll always have that time together where I'm playing with them. And sometimes when I'm there with them, I am putting on something to listen to so that they can see that I am also doing, something that's important for me. So I'm showing that balance of togetherness, consciousness, and my own identity as well.
No, it's a really great thing to offer as a mom, because our upbringing is so often filled with just witnessing our moms be a mom. That's what I saw in my friends' moms. I never saw any of the women mentors in my life, despite not having a mom growing up. I never saw any of the women in my life outside of that mom role that they played. And so it was a really confusing thing for me, being raised by a single dad and then not knowing what it really meant to be a woman. How do these pieces tie together? And so I've had to recreate that now as a mom, where I don't want my whole identity to be being a mom, but I want it to be a crucial part of my identity. And I want my kids to know that I love them, that I'm involved, and that I'm present, without it taking away from who I am. Because I never want them to struggle with their own self-identity the way that I did as a result of my parents being so involved in, this is my whole identity. It doesn't need to be that way. It's almost counterintuitive, because our kids become our whole world and we love them with all our heart, but we have to have that balance, like you said, and that's a great way to put it. I want my kids to know what my hobbies and interests are, because I involve them in it and because I do it by myself. It creates that relationship dynamic and exchange of, I'm not just mom, I'm also a coach and a business owner and all of these things that hopefully they can be really proud of one day.
Yeah, I love that. The kids aren't old enough, but the twins, they're 3, and they don't know what Pilates is, but they understand that a few times a week, my eldest daughter that lives with me, I do have 2 older children that are adults and don't live at home, but my 15-year-old and my mum and I, we all go to Pilates together. And I know that the twins, it's reformer Pilates, and that I know they feel like they're missing out sometimes because we all go together. So my plan is for them to go with their dad and have a look at what it is that we do, so they understand, what it is that we're going, other than just it's a word, but they have an understanding of that's a part of my health journey. And that's, because health is a really big value in our home. And so I just want them to be able to see parts of what they're not there for, just to give them an understanding. Yeah, I think that's...
No, it's really important. I mean, like my 4-year-old, right? She always asks me, why do you have to go to work? I want to come with you, because she attends daycare right now while I am running my businesses. So one day, just for fun, and I knew it was going to be hell on wheels, but I took my 4-year-old to work with me because I'm like, all right, kid, you want to see what mom does in a day? Let's go do it together. And she had to be quiet during meetings. And of course, I brought things to keep a 4-year-old entertained. So she had her coloring books and her toys and things like that. Since then, though, she's never asked to go to work with mom again.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Value of work. She understands conceptually as much as a 4-year-old can. Mom goes to work so that we can have our home and we can have toys and we can go do fun things when mom's not working. Mom's work provides the stability so that we can go to, the activity center that she loves going to, or the museum or the zoo. Those are all things that mommy's work gives us the ability to do. And then she gets excited for it. What do we get to do this weekend? And she doesn't know what costs money and what doesn't. So I can take her to a park and she's like, I'm so glad you go to work. But she's so cute. Yeah. It's so important to involve them in those things, though, in age appropriate ways.
Yeah. Well, I have not the same because I'm at home with the twins, but they can see that I come into the office, and because I don't want them coming in, we have a child gate up. So they can see me. Most of the time the door is shut, but sometimes they'll open it. But at least they can see that I'm in here on the computer and I'm in here doing work. And they shut the door because they can't come in. But at least they have a vision of what it is that I'm doing. They're not missing out on anything. Okay, that's right. What mum calls work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for all of your wisdom that you shared with us today. Where can our viewers find you? What platforms are you on?
Yeah, the most accessible way to reach me will be through my website. That's www.coachcurtin.com. And my social media handles are all Coach_Sydney Curtin. So on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, you can find me there.
Beautiful. And I will share them below.
Well, thank you so much. It was so great chatting with you. I hope we get to do it again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care.
Thanks for being here, beautiful souls. The Awaken Mumma podcast is a special place for us to grow, heal, and rise together, because you're never alone on this journey. I'd love to connect with you, so don't be shy. Please comment below your takeaways and let us build this empowered community. Remember to hit like, hit subscribe, and join me every Sunday at 2:22 Angel Numbers for more conversations to support your wellness, wholeness, and awakening. I'm truly grateful you're here.